Welcome to Chinatown Museum's History Matters live stream. Hello from Binondo, I am Janine Cabato, your host for Collections. Our talk is made possible by Cali Manila, Filipino Traditional Blades, Pinoy Blade Hunter, Eskrima Spar Club, and Sinag Filipino Martial Arts. Are you ready? Today's topic will be on Filipino blades. Traditionally, these blades have played and continue to play a huge role in agriculture, utilitarian purposes, and weaponry. We will look into these blades through the collections of Michael Cabato, Alan Ebora, Raimundo Lozero, Randy Salazar, and Rainer Dave Zapanta. We will start this off with our first speaker, Michael Cabato. He started collecting blades in 2007. His collection is composed of traditional blades from all around the Philippines, as well as several traditional blades from around the world. Aside from collecting blades, he actually stabs people for a living, as he is an interventional radiology consultant in hospitals in Metro Manila. Let's all welcome Michael. Come on in. Can you please unmute?
Hi, good afternoon, Jack.
There. Yes, we can hear you. We
Good
would love to
afternoon.
hear your blade journey, so you could start off with your collection story.
Yes, I actually started collecting. My first Filipino braid was actually a barisong which I collected, which I got when I was in high school. Unfortunately, that has since been lost. The first serious braid I got was a Nepalese kukri in 2007. But I went on a hiatus after that, and I went back into serious collecting when I started after I started doing Filipino martial arts. The weapon of choice for us was the ginunting, and after I acquired this, my collection just grew. I just wanted to get more. So I would check different braid forums and would connect with different sources through Facebook groups, and this way I managed to acquire more blades, more and more through the years. So I think my collection significantly expanded this 2020. So basically, that's how it is now. It's a combination of it's mostly modern braids made in the traditional way, with a few old braids mixed in. So going through my collection, it would be better to start north going south. So here we have examples of Ilocos braids which I have. They're kind of cool. They're cool because they are named differently as compared to other braids around the country. The nomenclature starts with the handle. So, like for example, we have a Sinan Kapitan with a handle shaped in the cap in shaped in the head of shaped like the head of a captain. So we call this Sinan Kapitan Bulong Pagay. So by Bulong Pagay, you refer to the shape of the blade. So it's the shape of the handle first, then the shape of the blade. So here we have another one, Sinan Gabriela. So a handle shape to reference Gabriela Silang, and the ganado refers to the shape of the blade. Then we move on down to the Cordilleras. Braids here are also unique because these are usually one-piece socketed braids, and then the handle is wrapped in rattan. So examples would be the hinalong and the pinahig. Going down to southern Luzon, these blades are varied with utilitarian and fighting applications. I like the Carabao horn hilts with nice engravings. Blade profiles. I like the Sinampalok, which is forward curved, which makes it similar to the Visayan Ginunting. And then there we go down to Bicol. It's one of the places where the bladesmithing tradition is very strong. There are lots of blades here, Wastari, Sinampaloks, and the most famous of them all is minasbad, of which there are many variants, most of which I do not yet have. Then we go down to Leyte and Samar. My mom is from Leyte, hence my attraction to these blades. Particularly, I like the modern Zanzibar because of the intricate carvings of the Bakunawa head in the hilt. And then going down to Central Visayas, we have the most famous of this is the Pinute, which which is the traditional fighting blade in that area, and it's very suited for most styles of Filipino martial arts. Then uh, another place with very strong bladesmithing traditions is the Panay Islands and Negros Occidental. So here we have the Talibongs, Binagons, Ginuntings, the Lugod, all of which are used for utilitarian and fighting purposes. There are subtle differences between the blades and scabbards in Aklan, Antique, and Iloilo and the Panay Highlands. And then going further down to the Sulu archipelago, of course we have the barongs, which are really famous worldwide. And then to Basilan and Zamboanga City, we have the pira, which is the traditional weapon of the Yakan group. And then also in my collection are several blades from the Lumad tribes. My favorite is the Bagobo Kampilan. And these are very nice examples of this. And then we also have from Surigao several Sundang and Binulang. So these are just a rundown of blades in my collection. And as much as possible, I try to get blades from all around the Philippines. My favorite among these, I would group them into the old blades and the modern blades. For the old blades, my favorite would be the Chris and the Kampilan. The Chris, because particularly it really fits my hand. Its weight is just right for me, and when I play around with it, do the live blade forms, it really fits. For the modern blades, my favorite would be the Ginunting, but that would be mostly because of my training influence in Filipino martial arts. The modern tira from Zamboanga is also a favorite because, well, I'm from Zamboanga City, and this particular blade handles very well. It also cuts very well, which is why it's one of the favorite blades in my collection. Yeah.
In this set, I'm particularly drawn to the Paligoma and the Calis Taluseco. But I think also I'm biased because I'm from Mindanao. So I really find that the intricacies of the Mindanao blades here are very, very interesting. So
Yeah, actually, particularly,
yeah.
I would agree. I would really agree with you on that. The Calis Taluseco, the Bagobo Paligoma, these are actually very, very nice examples of blades from that area.
Mm-mm. All right. I think for the other collectors also, we will be seeing more of these. There are some that I've seen in the slides that would have some of these blades. Thank you for showing us your collection, Michael.
Yes.
You're welcome. All right. We are encouraging our viewers to comment and ask questions on what intrigues you about Filipino blades. We will have a question and answer section after all of the speakers have shared their collection. So we will take note of that, and do send us your questions. Keep them coming. For now, let's travel virtually with the interesting blade journey of our next speaker, who is actually a travel show producer, Alan Ebora. Instead of collecting the usual souvenir like magnets during his travels, he prefers to collect traditional blades as souvenirs of places that he goes to. Because of his passion for blades, he made a blog and a YouTube channel. I think you've heard of this. It's called Pinoy Blade Hunter, where he posts how he finds the blades and features the craftsmanship of bladesmiths and artisans. He aims to collect samples of traditional blades from different parts of the country and abroad. Welcome to the show, Alan.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us here sa Chinatown Museum. So now I will tell you about my collection and my collection journey. As Ja said kanina, I'm a travel show producer and I've been doing this since 2007. Pero yung pag-ikot namin into different provinces in the Philippines, since nakikita namin kung paano sila mamuhay, how they live, how they do their crafts, how they make their stuff, agriculture, etc. So nakikita namin, ako particularly, nakikita ko na iba't iba talaga yung blades na ginagamit nila sa iba't ibang activity. Kunyari, this one is salakot made in Dinagat Island. Tapos iba yung blades na ginagamit nila doon, iba yung forma, iba yung shapes. Kunyari, galing sa Mindanao. This one is a gunong from Mindanao. Very different siya. Kunyari, itatabi mo sa isang blade. This one is from Ilocos. So, itsura pa lang, sobrang different na. And the usage niya ay, I would say na different din. Dito kasi mas marami kang agricultural use and utilitarian. This one is more EDC type o mas maliit mga everyday usage din. So yun, different locations na pinupuntahan namin. Ayan. Every province has a different blade na ginagawa. Tapos every location na pinupuntahan namin, meron akong napupulot na story na nakukonect ko dun sa mga blades na nakukuha ko. Kunyari, this one at the top picture or top left picture is me carrying a bag. That one is from Israel. Israel and Jordan. Ang storya ng kutsilyo na to, this one nasa middle na picture. Ang storya niyan, nabili ko siya sa Jordan, pero going back to Israel, meron palang weapons ban. So hindi ko siya madadala to Israel. Nag-iisip ako kung paano ko siya madadala. So may danger na baka ma-hold ako sa airport or baka hindi na ako makabalik ng Pilipinas. So yun yung kadikit na kwento ng blade. At tapos sa baba naman, pero syempre nakabalik naman ako ng Pilipinas ng maluwalhati. So ayun. So nasa baba naman yung picture sa kasama natin dito si Forged in Fire champion Rayo Lim. So Forged in Fire is a forging competition in the US. Isa siyang Pinoy na nanalo doon. Tapos ito yung iba ko pa mga blade idol, si Ram Makimot ng Batangas, tapos si Mang Diosdado Ona na isa sa mga legend na gumagawa ng mga balisong na katulad nito. Tapos dito sa lower right picture naman is yung sa Sagada naman ito. Ang kwento naman ito, naghahanap talaga ako ng blade from Sagada, pero at that time walang tinda sa mga tindahan. So all places na pinupuntahan namin, sinasabi nila, sa ganito pang araw, sa Sabado pa magkakaroon ng tindahan. Hindi kami aabot ng Sabado. So lahat ng mga napagtanungan ko, wala silang natitinda until I met this guy, another guide from another group na meron siyang blade na dala. So yun, kinausap ko siya and eventually he agreed to sell me his knife. So ayun. So yun yung mga kwento dun sa mga knives na gano'n. That is why it's very interesting. Iba't ibang location talaga, iba't ibang blades from Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, which leads me to the the Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao na mga blades natin. Kunyari, ito nasa top layers, mga Luzon blades, and then mga middle blades, mga Visayan blades, and sa mga Mindanao. Makikita mo talaga yung difference kasi ginagamit nila ito in different ways. Tapos dinesign nila ito according to their needs. So, ganon. So, merong iba na talagang weapons, yung iba talagang agricultural, yung iba is in between, can do both. Siyempre, all of these can be martial blades or can be used in defense or whatever. Pero yon. Tapos, pero sa lahat ng yan, sa Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, meron siyempre ng mga blades na close to my heart, which are my favorite blades. Number one, siyempre is yung balisong. Sa balisong. Kasi ako po ay taga Batangas. I am from Batangas. And nung, siyempre, very common ito sa amin, sa palengke, makakabili ka ng balisong. Noong high school, going to college, bumili ako ng balisong, not for anything else, but just for parang cultural identity. Kasi kumbaga, galing kang Batangas, punta ka Maynila, mag-aaral ka doon. Not for anything, hindi ko naman siya dinala anywhere else, basta nandun lang siya sa bahay. Parang cultural identity, cultural identification ko. Ayan. Tapos dito sa Balisong, through my blog na meet ko virtually, itong si Kaboy Almasan is one, dito sa left picture, si Kaboy Almasan is one of the oldest makers ng balisong na siya lang mag-isa yung gumagawa from start to finish. I think nasa around 80 years old na siya or 70 plus years old na. Ito yung isa sa mga gawa niya, isang napakagandang, malaking balisong. Ito yung tinatawag ko na Fat Rambo. So yan, compare mo sa normal size ng balisong, mas relatively mas malaki siya dun sa tapos maganda kasi siya akala mo pare-parehas lang yung tiles, merong iba-ibang anggenyo. Pero going to the exotics naman, sa mga exotic unusual blades for me, ito. Yung Zanzibar. Yan, ito yung Zanzibar ng Karigaran. Nabanggit na to ni Doc Mike kanina. Very unusual para sa akin kasi growing up in Batangas, ang mga itak, ang mga gulok na familiar ako is yung parang maumbok sa gitna, may belly. This one actually looks like a sword. Kumbaga slender siya, mahaba, pointy, para siya talagang sword. Plus, yung ano niya, carving sa hilt. Sobrang intricate. This is Bakunawa, a dragon. Yan. Sa ating folklore and mythology, Bakunawa is yung nag-swallow ng moon. Yan, Philippine mythology. Tapos na-meet natin si Mang Emiliano. Si Mang Emiliano, panday siya from the olden times. Nung bata pa siya, nagpapanday na siya until tumanda siya at pinasa na niya yung yung smithing tradition sa kanyang pamilya. And then we met si Manang Gloria, nasa left na photo, nasa right na photo. Si Manang Gloria nagko-continue nung smithing tradition. Siya na yung nagmamanage nung smithy, nung pandayan nila Mang Emiliano. Tapos yan, speaking of exotic blades, pupunta naman tayo dun sa super exotic for me. Kasi ito yung mga naging grail blades ko na since nag-start ako mag-collect, ito na talaga yung pinapangarap ko, sana magkaroon ako ng Chris, magkaroon ako ng kampilan, magkaroon ako ng barong. Kasi sa itsura pa lang, kumbaga nakikita natin siya sa mga history books, sa mga paintings, sa mga depictions ng Lapu-Lapu, fight in Mactan, battling Magellan, ganyan. So recently nagkaroon ako ng chance to acquire through a private collector my grail blades. This one. Sa kampilan. So yan, wala nang gumagawa ng ganitong klase, kumbaga ganito yung specs, yung exact specs niya. So I'd consider it talaga antique. Wala nang ibang gumagawa. Yung meron yung syempre gumagawa ng mga modern, pero hindi na ganun same specifications ng ginagawa nila as before. Sabi nila na nagpina-appraise ko or pinakita ko doon sa ibang mga mas marurunong na blades people, they estimated this at around 1800s. Late 1800s to early 1900s yung mga ganitong Chris. Kunyari ito, this Chris, yan, nasa mga around 1800s daw. Tapos yung way of construction niya is very different sa mga ginagawa pa ngayon. So wala nang nakakagawa daw ng ganitong klase. So yun.
Thank you, Alan.
Ayun.
But
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, what I like about your presentation was that it shared some smithing traditions around the country also. Kasi most of the collectors would really buy from these blacksmiths, no?
Mm-hmm. Oo, tapos yung iba, syempre yung mga smiths na na-encounter natin, sooner or later, kailangan nilang ipasa. Pero minsan, sila mismo, wala na sila mapagpasahan nung art nila, nung smithing tradition nila. So, yun, importante na makita natin sila, yung mga smiths, and then maipagpatuloy nila yung craftsmanship o yung tradition of smithing para hindi tuloy ang mawala yung mga
That's true.
Filipino blades.
That's really, really true. I hope we have an award for this also sa NCCA kasi I've seen na parang there were weavers and also other crafts they also had awards for it. But for blacksmiths, I have yet to see. Ayun. Thank you for shining a light on this topic.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next speaker, we would like to bring out our poll question. Which Filipino blade do you prefer, old or modern? You will see in the screen that there will be choices there which you can click. Is it old or is it modern? So from the two collectors that we've seen previously, it will give you at least a glimpse of which you think is your personal choice, right? Is it old Filipino blades or modern Filipino blades? We are curious to know which one you prefer, and I'm also going to lock in my answer. But because I'm working for a museum, I have my own biases towards which pieces would really have an interesting story to tell. All right. So, but there's no wrong or right answer. It really just is a personal preference. Before we look at your answers, I will first introduce our next speaker. It's Randy Salazar. He is a caver and turned blade enthusiast. Randy started collecting blades as a byproduct of his caving explorations. As one of the admin of Filipino Traditional Blades page, he advocates to find and identify our local blades, locate the pandays, and help preserve the bladesmithing tradition of the country. Randy is also a hobbyist bladesmith himself and was the Open Division champion of the first Philippine cutting competition in 2018. Let's all welcome Randy. Hello, Randy. You have to...
Yes.
There you
Good
go.
afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes. Hi, Ja. So, hi, everyone who's tuning in. Just to give you a journey about the addiction that I have with the blades, I started out actually as a Boy Scout and move on to the outdoors. So, as an outdoorsman, the blade is a very important tool for us. You know, hindi ka pwedeng lumabas sa outdoors without the blades. So other than being an outdoorsman, I'm also into caving. So we go around the country actually to help uh, survey and map our caves for protection. So I'm part of a national caving group that goes around the country to explore the caves. During these expeditions, actually, we'd find blades actually which are very unique and uh, arouses our curiosity. So, napagtanong-tanongan until such time we got to get to know some old timers. I call them old timers. They are actually respected blade historians. Style Ala, Zelo Mali, Braulio Agudelo, Lawrence Lasco were actually foremost blade historians. And we were comparing notes actually of the blades that we're finding. And to my surprise, actually, there is a similarity to the old blades and the modern blades. So my friends and I, the other cavers, decided, okay, we're encountering a lot of blades as we go along caving. Let's make a page, dump all the information there, because we get frustrated with what we're seeing when we Google online. So it's not the blades that we're seeing. So let's once and for all make a page, dump in the blades there with the help of these historians actually that are helping us identify these blades. And that's the story of Filipino traditional blades. It's not actually a selling page, it's more of an info page to identify kung ano ba talaga yung mga blades natin, and in a way, if how we could be able to help our local blacksmiths have a decent livelihood, because most common than not na encounter natin, the blacksmiths are actually parang nagiging nahuhulog na isang kahig isang tukay yung livelihood nila. Their children do not want to follow their, kung ano man ginagawa nila, they want to do something else. So there we hear actually stories na namamatay na siya na industriya. So more of my advocacy actually is to preserve the blades that we have by making sure that our local blacksmiths are identified. We could be able to help them. They would be able to promote the blades and thus have a renaissance, hopefully, about our traditional blades all over the country. So part of the journey that we do actually is more of grassroots blade hunting. So what I would call blind builds. Next slide, please.
Hi, Radley. Before we go to your collection, I would like to just share that for our poll, a lot of those who are watching said that 82% said that they would prefer old Filipino blades. So I'm pretty sure you'll bring this up. Only 18% said modern Filipino blades, right? You can
All
proceed
right.
to your
Thank you very much.
collection. Mhm.
Yeah, that's a very good revelation actually. That mostly most collectors actually go for the old stuff. We also talk, may pinag-uusapan kami with sa Filipino traditional blades na yes, it's very nice to actually collect the old blades. But to be able to further and preserve our tradition, we also have to protect the new by protecting the knowledge and make sure that the knowledge of making these blades are passed on to the next generation. Hence the blade hunts that we do. Next slide, please. All right. So I'd like to share with you, or you're probably seeing pictures of people actually. These are the people actually which are your products of our blade hunt. The first photo on the left actually is Paulding Caballero of the Panay Bukidnon. Before, when we talk about the talibong as a blade, it's always identified with a clan. Until recently, when doing the blade hunts on the grassroots level, finding the smiths on the different provinces, we were able actually to locate that, okay, the talibong actually does exist in the different provinces, not just in Aklan province po, which is it's very popular. So you have Antique province, you have Capiz, and then most recently, actually, when we bump into Poding Caballero on the photo, he's actually proof actually that the Iloilo talibongs are still alive. In fact, this was the talibong that I have, and this is from Garangan, Iloilo. So the talibong na ito po, Polding Caballero is actually one of the wisdom keepers of the Panay Bukidnon. So he's really an IP from Garangan, Kalinog. And siya po yung gumawa ng talibong na ito. So it's an indigenous person talibong. Also, one of the most difficult na acquire ng mga pieces natin would be yung mga sulu pieces natin. For reasons na malayong sulu, we have security concerns about the area. One of the blade journeys that also opened up the Moro blades to us is the voyage of the Balangay, wherein some of the crews actually were friends of mine. I asked them, can you help me find certain blade. It's a blade I promised to a friend of mine. So that's Chief Taha of the Balangay Sin Sulu, which is appropriate naman yung pangalan. They actually got us some blades from Sulu and brought it to us. No? So these are the very first blades I had from Sulu, thanks to the Balangay voyage. In itself, historic Kenyan journey. They were just in Sulu for repairs for the boats during that time. Next slide, please. And of course, on the left side naman is Nonyo Chudosyo, Libakaw, Aklan. Very popular ang mga talibong, except that there was a clamor na ang hirap niyang i-acquire. So katuwaan lang namin, after a caving trip, we ventured, actually me and my friends, punta tayo ng Libakaw. During that time, rough roads pa. We were asking around and then we stumbled upon Tatay Nono. So Nono Chudosyo is known to everyone na into collecting right now. We help Tatay Nono be introduced also, na at least ma-acquire na yung blades nila. It's not just selling locally, at least within the country pwede na tayong mag-ano. And he's actually making modern blades. On the right photo is the late Marshal Gorino Sr. The ginunting is very popular nowadays, no? But not known to many, actually. Si Tatay Marshal Gorino Sr., who passed away just a few weeks ago, actually, was the very first one that came out with the modern ginunting variant. So this is one of the pieces of Tatay Marshal. He's from Silay, Negros. No? So siya po, ang profile is very popular and accepted na nationwide. But this one, actually, this form na development is actually made by that man. Produkto rin ng isa namin sa mga pagsasaliksik namin kung nasaan ba sila. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about my collection. My collection actually is a mixture of more of modern and old blades. In my aspect naman, why I collect old blades is I'd like to use them as benchmarks for looking for the modern blades for reasons naiiba na rin kasi napapag-iwanan. That's why a lot of people prefer the old blades because mas detalyado sila compared to the modern ones. So we would like to find the modern blades actually, but encourage the smith actually to give quality. No, I personally believe that if a blade enthusiast is willing to pay, willing to wait, a local smith will be able to give a top quality blade actually, which is more or less comparable to the old ones. Also, as part of that, natuto na rin ako mag bladesmith as a hobby so that I'd be able to make restorations on blades, and at the same time also be able to speak with the smiths with their own language. And we've basically done exhibits na rin. Next slide, please. All right, so those are some of my collections. Don't ask me how many. I actually lost count. We haven't counted, but I make sure actually that I have a piece from each island as much as possible. So I try to collect from each island, both modern and old blades, probably running in the hundreds ng collection ko po. So some of the collections that are not as common, we commonly call them bagobo kampilans, but in the old days they're called paligoma or war blades. So these are actually the bagobo kampilans. The one in the middle is the warrior type. The one on the sides are the datu types. We tried actually, we found a smith who was of the Ovo Manubo and asked actually if they can recreate that. Unfortunately, they refused to build us. They made a purok bolo and the lower class blades for us, but not the kampilan. So we'd like to presume actually that as an outsider, we're not allowed to have blades like this built, no? But hoping that they still know how to make these blades. All right, so next blades would be, okay, this is one of my favorite actually. Everybody when they see the blade, they always say it's a barong, no? Leaf shape rin siya ng konti. It's most popular among all fighting art enthusiasts or mga blade enthusiasts natin. To me as well, malapit sa puso ko yung barong. So the barong actually, its origins is of the Sulu archipelago. So sariling atin po to siya. And ang considered na legit sources po ng barong natin would be Sulu, Zamboanga, Basilan, and Tawi-Tawi. So these are the areas that compose the Sulu archipelago. All right, so next slide. All right, so part of my collection actually, on the top left, I just got this recently. If you'd notice, actually medyo malabo yung photo, but there's an insignia actually of the Moro National Liberation Front. So this old blade probably has a story to tell, having that insignia on its cupboard. And ones on the lower photo actually are older blades natin. So I use the older blades as a benchmark actually to compare with the modern blades and see how much they have evolved. But majority of the blades that I collect are actually of the modern era na. Next slide, please. All right. Isang malapit sa puso ko ng mga blades are actually the talibongs. The talibongs are from the 4 provinces of Panay Island, Aklan, Capiz, Iloilo, and Antique. And the unique thing about this blade is actually it's very endemic to Panay Island, and medyo may spillover siya sa Negros. Buhay na buhay pa po yung kultura ng talibong po. It's considered a highland blade. So the purpose of it is noong panahon, it's a fighting blade. It's a source of pride being carried by the all right, it's a blade actually is carried by the Highlanders or the Panay Bukidnon. So yung damit po is yung cultural identity po nila. It's weaving na ginagamit nila is yung panubok na tinatawag po natin. There are 2 types ng klase. The most popular that we're seeing right now yung wooden po na yung wooden sheet po, and mahaba po yung may sungay po siya, kalimitan mahaba. Ang tawag po dito is lunas. But the older variant po na medyo grail sa lahat are what they would call the sapot, which is the silver-covered na mga talibong po natin. So ginagawa po yan, and it's a nice piece to acquire because the deity figures are actually, other than being unique to Panay Island, marami po silang klase. So you'll never get tired of collecting these blades. In fact, if you're after the Aklan pieces, it might interest you that there is a festival called the Talibong Festival in Aklan, which is held every year, wherein all artisans actually submit their entry and prestige po nila kung sino na nanalo for the years, bragging rights for the year. Okay, so next slide, please. All right, so I was saying, yung kahoy po na deity po, ang tawag po dito lunas. It could be either wood or carabao horn po. The upper left po na blade po natin, na photo, are actually the older variants po ng talibong po natin. So marami po silang figural deities. Alright, next one. There's another type of blade also. Technically, in modern times, talibong pa rin po yung tawag sa kanila. But this is actually specific to Iloilo, called the tinegre. The tinegre po is different because it has a shorter horn. Usually yung figural po nila maiksi lang po yung mga nose ng figural. So that's why they're called tinegre. Or if you translate it, it means tiger. So the tiger-looking hills actually are also tinegre, which are actually called that way in Iloilo lang. Unfortunately, what you see most of the time now are actually the old ones. So this is part of the journey that I am doing right now, that I'm trying to encourage the local artisans to rediscover the carving of the hilts. What makes it a tinigre is actually the hilt, not the blade. So just a regular blade, it could be called the binangon, it could be called the talibong, but because of the figural deity, that's why they're called tinigre. All right, so moving on to the next blades. Punta naman tayo sa Central Visayas. So when we talk about Lake Summer, for example, very popular when we talk about the Zanzibar. But if you go towards the Samar area, may isang masarap i-collect na blade. Tinatawag nilang binalhag. This one is from Mabini. So counterpart po ng Zanzibar. So this is the modern equivalent that we can find to the old ones. I haven't seen an old one until now. So this is the the Minalhag of Mabini Samar. So sometimes ang iba tatawagin nila, the outsiders would call it talibong, but I think it's more of a mis-idea actually. We're still finding for the modern version. The older versions are the ones on the left, upper left of the photo. On the lower right naman is also another product of, on the lower left, I'm sorry, is another product of those market hunts that we did. It's called locally a bubier, no? So medyo nakaupo ang blade, but ang local name ng blade is a bubier. Binihisa na lang po yan namin. Part of my hobby as natutong mag bladesmithing is I tinker around, try to play around with the blades and see how I can beautify them so they become more collectible and more appealing actually to the modern collectors. But I do not sell blades, huh? All right, next please. All right, so very popular. Most collectors actually go for the Bangsamoro blades. So here in the photo we have the crease of the Bangsamoro. You probably see them at my back right now. Tatlo po yung profiles po natin ng crease. We have the straight, yung straight lang siya. Then we have the half straight and the half wave po. Mauuna po yung wave, then it goes straight, and then you have the crease which is full wave na po siya. Iba-iba po yung tawag niya, depende kung saan po galing yung blade. The popular area sources of this crease would be Sulu, Maguindanao, and Lanao po, or the Maranao crease na tinatawag po natin. Next slide, please. All right. Some other blades of the Sulu archipelago. The one on the top is called Apira. Ethnicity is actually Yakan, or the island would be Basilan po. So this would be the trad blades of the Yakan po yung nasa taas. Second to the top would be a barong from Zamboanga. I actually would like to call it Lubian Barong to give respect also to the maker who popularized this type of blade, si Mang Jimmy Lubian, who passed away, if I'm not mistaken, last year. Pero pinagpapatuloy po ng mga artisans niya ang paggawa ng blade. So his trademark actually is the mother pearl inlay on the scabbards po. And then below that would be Calista Luseco of Sulu. So this would be an older blade of mine. And one of the balangay blades that was brought in sa akin po would be the one below, which is from Holo, Sulu.
Hi, Sir Randy. I would just like to ask,
Yes po, ma'am.
you are based in Manila, correct?
I am based in Cebu City.
You're based in Cebu. I was wondering, because we also have a question from one of the viewers, how you travel the blades when you buy it from these places. How do you travel it to Cebu?
Mostly binibigay lang sa akin. Not just a joke. Part of the grassroots blade hunt namin, especially when we encounter the new smiths, sometimes we don't introduce them immediately. Hinahanda po namin sila. Like in the case po of the Libacao blacksmiths po, they were resistant po of doing shipping ng mga blades po natin. So sometimes I have to go there and help them out, run them through how to do shipments within the country. So the couriers po natin, kung if I can plug them, most couriers naman would accept that it's part of their policies naman na natanggap po yung shipment po ng blades. When I go grassroots hunting, usually may dala po ako sa sakyan, so I would carry with them. So I haven't really encountered any problems bringing the blades home. Pag sumasakay po ako ng barko, I just declare that I'm carrying blades. I have a proper case for them. The purser of the boat actually would usually keep the blades for safety, and then I get the blades actually upon arrival in the port of destination. It would be the same thing sa aeroplano po. Sa aeroplano naman, all you have to do is just declare it with security. As long as you have a scabbard for the blades, you will not encounter any problems po. As long as it's checked in, not carry on po.
And definitely bubble wrapped and also in a box.
Yes, usually before I forget pala, one peculiarity ng mga Mindanao blades po, if you're going to be acquiring a blade from Mindanao, usually po kumukuha po sila ng PNP certification for transport, which actually serves also as your parang provenance of the blade na galing siya talaga doon. So I would suggest to the other collectors, when you get that PNP certification, keep it also, because it becomes the provenance of the blade that you have. So that's the quirkiness of the Mindanao blades, because most of the blades in Mindanao, pag nakita mo naman yung Bangsamoro blades, most of them are actually fighting blades talaga.
Mm-mm. We have one last question for this slide, Sir Randy. Which regions call it Calis and which would call it Chris? This is from Radigan Apid. He's asking, is the difference in the profile the place of origin, or is it purely just linguistic? What's the difference
Very
between
good
Calis
question.
and Chris?
Very good question. Actually, a Calis is what we call a Chris that actually comes from the Sulu archipelago area. Not necessarily made in Holo, but made in the Sulu archipelago region. So there are distinct, mauubos yung oras natin dito if we talk about the nuances that make it Calis, but there are actually identifying marks that helps us identify if it's Calis or if it's a Chris. So the other Bangsamoro areas, actually they're called Chris if it's from Maguindanao, or they're coming from ano. Just to give an insight to everyone, the photo right now that you're seeing, the one in the middle, yung nasa gitna po, is from Maguindanao. It's an old blade from Maguindanao. On its right side, the one with the ivory hilt would be Maranao, and the rest po would be Calis po sila lahat. Both modern and old blades.
Oh,
Calis.
okay.
I have a question though. I have a question. Is it necessary that a Chris has to be wavy?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
I have a couple of Chris, like in the middle, the one that you're seeing actually is called a Matigto, which because it's Maguindanaon, it's actually a straight Chris po. Yung nasa gitna na bulbous po yung hilt niya.
Okay.
Okay. So here's another variant that you're seeing, also from Basilan, yung pira po natin. This one is a shorter version lang ng Yakan Pira. Okay, so next slide. Let's go up north naman. Isa rin na rich yung culture natin are the Cordilleran blades that we have, no? Very little, they have their own term and terminologies for these blades, but some of the very popular ones which were discussed by the other speakers are the pinahigs, no? The hinalong full tongue blade. So other than the socket handles that they have another variant actually, which is called inipit. It's just not here in the photo. So merong inipit. The more popular ones are the sinalongs natin, or the ones which are socket type po yung handle po nila. And then of course you have well, everyone likes to call it the head axe. So a gamen. This one's an old one, but there are still modern blades, actually modern axes that are being made. It's just everybody likes to call it head axe. But I'd like to qualify actually that the practice of head hunting is a long gun or stop practice na among our Cordilleran brothers as well. But it's nice to revisit actually the old culture ng mga kapatid natin up north. All right, so next slide. Punta naman tayo down south, which is ang Bicol area. Medyo marami-rami ngayon ng mga camser natin, ng mga enthusiasts po. So upper blade po is an older ginunting. So the Visayans would see a ginunting differently, but the Bicol type is different po. So the one on top actually is what they call the Bicol ginunting po, which looks different from what we're used to na ginunting. Okay? And the one below actually is another blind build that we have, rediscovering the Sinagangan Minasbad by one of our friends who actually trying to rediscover the Minasbads of Bicol. So this one below would be a newer piece po na pinagawa po natin. Moving on. All right, so let's go to my top. Medyo mahirap maghanap ng mga top blades. But for me, it's more of like the grail blades that I have. First and foremost on my grail blades is the Sapot Talibong. Why is it my grail blade? I am from Panay. So meron akong affinity. But this is actually, it's considered already a dead blade because no one actually knows how to make this hilt po. This is what makes it a sapot. No? So this is what makes it a sapot, yung handle niya po mismo, which is actually nakabalot po ng silver. So underneath the silver is actually wood. Kahoy lang po siya. So what happens to make it sapot, you have your silver, becomes a sapot. Tatlo po yung klase. Mauubusan lang tayo po ng oras if I discuss the different type of talipong handles po. But I'm hoping actually that some of our modern artisans would rediscover making the sapot. So this is part of, kumbaga, bugal or ang pride po ng isang tagapanay po, ang magkaroon po ng sapot. And it's not often that you see something like this surface up to be collected or up for sale po. So I was just lucky enough to find this one surfacing and nobody knew what it was, so I grabbed it. My next favorite blade actually is a modern one. It's a modern set. As I said, I'm more privy to the modern blades, but I also like to find quality pieces. So these are actually modern blades made in Sulu. And why it's my favorite, because it's proof actually po na the skills of making a quality type, if we give the smiths a chance, is very much alive. So making this blade, actually there were no shortcuts. If you notice, the threads are even silver, mop inlay, the ukils, the designs, the carvings are up there. So if we actually encourage our local artisans to give it their all, hindi natin titipirin, we will be amazed actually. They will surprise us with the quality pieces. So this is actually old quality modern blade that we have. And lastly, ang pinaka-paborito ko po, this is what started me off. It's called the Sinan Padak Bulong Unas from Pangasinan. This is my very first blade. I think I got this, if I'm not mistaken, I was 8 years old. Bigay po ng father ko. Hindi pa ako ganun ka-enthusiast, so I lost the scabbard. This one started me off sa aking blade journey back in 1980 pa. All right, so are there any questions?
There are quite a number of questions in terms of, for example, do you know of a specific archive where people could check on the blades? Is there such a thing? Or do you think this would be an opportunity for all blade collectors to come up with an archive of Philippine traditional blades?
That's a very good question. I've actually been egging the old guys. You know, I personally believe that I am just an enthusiast. I'm just one of those connections to connect the old blades to the new blades, because I'm doing the new blade hunt part. But I believe that if there are any guys actually that are more informative and have the more authority to make an archive for this, it would be the guys I mentioned earlier. And if they want to check actually a specific blade, we created actually Filipino traditional blades for our own consumption, because we will not remember everything. So we just actually dump all the photos and information about that blade. And if somebody asks for an ID on the blade, we just actually would search on Filipino traditional blades and find out what it looks like, you know, what would be the name, saan galing, and kung may information on the smith, so you'll be able to acquire straight from source po. So very important po, kasi it's not just about blade collecting, but making sure that this tradition of appreciating our blades and making our blades are passed on before it dies out po sa atin, because we have dead blades na po in our collections.
That's true. There should be continuity talaga. So for now, we would like to encourage everyone to follow Randy's page. It's Filipino Traditional Blades, right? And we will also be showing a number of contacts later on, which you could follow if you want to learn more information about this. So what I love about Randy's collection are actually the hilts, and especially the one with the sapot talibong, right? So we're learning new things every day. We will get to discuss more about blade collection during the open forum. So please ask questions about, especially for those who are into blade collection already, more questions on how to care for your collection. So we are collating all of those questions to be answered later. Before we move to our next speaker, Ray is ready. Okay. Raimundo Lucero was first drawn to blades because of Filipino martial arts. He was interested in its cultural value, aesthetics, and handling, aside from which he was exposed to traditional blades by its foremost authorities. Through them, he's heightened his involvement in research and martial testing of blades. Other than his interest in blades, Ray is raising three adorable kids and does full-time work in the BPO industry. Let's all welcome Ray. Hi, Ray.
Hello.
Please unmute your video.
Hi. Hi. Good afternoon, everyone.
There. Hello.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank Chinatown Museum for this opportunity. So hello again, Blade brothers, acquaintances. I'm going to tell the story of how I got into blades. So I'm actually a learner of Filipino martial arts and model fighting arts. So for me, blades are both a training tool and a companion. And I always test out martial techniques through test cutting. So I started with custom-made blades, but after getting a taste of what traditional blades have to offer, I've stuck with them ever since. Okay, so I've also been trained in the restoration of old blades, which I thoroughly enjoy. Giving life to old blades and testing their potency in the modern era is a very fulfilling activity. In this manner, I've been able to study a lot of regional clad blades. So for every person, there's always a purpose or what keeps him or her stuck to that hobby or invested in that hobby. So some people, for example, might looking at this calice, some of them would focus on the artwork, the excellent craftsmanship of how the hilt is made, the silver wires, or the blade itself. But some people like me, aside from the aesthetic value, would also focus on the cultural aspect. So what are the traditions and beliefs in the making and the wielding of the calice, for example? How does it figure in more fighting arts? And of course, how do I wield it in order for it to become functional? So I've gone through a lot of blades, but I've kept those which I feel requires a lifetime of learning, has historical significance, or suits my fighting style. Right. So currently, these are the blades that I'm studying. So let's go through them one by one very shortly. I'll show you. So this is actually a Maranao Chris with a typical hilt. That means it's not common. So it's actually an antique sample, pre-1900s most likely. So you can see there are silver inlay inscriptions along its blade. All right. Yeah. Just joking. And then, of course, this is the blade earlier. It's a Sulu Cali Seco, probably 1970s or 1980s. And then, of course, one of the biggest boy in my collection. This is Maranao Kampilan. So you can see the way of holding the blade. It's just one hand. It's really just for one hand because this is figural. So yeah, it's pretty long. And it's very light. See? And then I have my Leyte Talibong, also an antique, used by the Pulahanes. This is probably before the World War, before the Second World War. And I have a modern sample this time, Lawi Lawi, Pinati Bolo, given to me by Sir Randy. Much appreciation. So I use it for martial arts, Eskrima. And then I have Sinan Kapitan, Bulong Pagay. This is from Santa, Ilocos Sur. Also use it for martial arts. Very good cutter. And then I have, yes, one of my favorites. This is a Lumad blade. I think it was already discussed earlier. This is Bagobo Paligoma. So also an amazingly light blade. Almost feels like a toy, actually. And finally, my foremost utility blade is the Bohol Bouvier, as discussed by Sir Randy already earlier. So these are all my current blades. So moving on to my favorite blades. I have the Maranao Campilan, Leyte Talibong, and Bagobo Paligoma. Let's check them out one by one. Okay, so first, okay. So here we have the Maranao Campilan. It has a 10 centimos de peso Queen Isabella II of Spain coin. So that's its claim to provenance. This coin was actually produced in 1864 to 1868. So for those of you who don't know, Queen Isabella II was actually the one who made a valuable contribution to the currency of the Philippines. The Bank of the Philippine Islands actually traces its roots to what she did back during that time. So the Campilan has a red cord and a little container across the hilt, supposed to be an anting-anting. And as you can see, the user facing side of the handle is broken because when you swing it, that side actually comes in contact with your hand. So it's an evidence of use. So this weapon has been used. Let's move on to another long traditional blade. So this time we have the Leyte Talibong. It's 25 inch, 32 inches overall length, medium weight, forward leaning wield. The action part, as you can see it near the tip of the blade, something that I would like to think is blood acid. So that's the black part. It's an uncommon size of hilt and blade because the usual size of the Leyte Talibong is smaller. Usually it's just overall 20 inches in size. So it's historically accepted as the preferred weapon of the Pulahanes or Jos. These are the rebels who fought both the Spaniards and the Americans. So they were also branded as brigands because, of course, our colonizers don't want the rebels getting the better of them. Okay, and then let's move on to my last favorite blade, a Lumatrad blade, the Bagobo Paligoma. So it's actually short in relation to the other two, 17.5-inch length blade, 23.5 inches overall length. Very, very light. It's my lightest blade and highly balanced wheel. So the reason for this is that the Bagobo were actually small in stature. So in effect, their blades are also lighter than the other traditional blades. So these blades are worn during ceremonies. It's popularly called as a Bagobo Dato Kampilan. So the unique thing about this blade is that the blade is older than the hilt and scabbard. I think that's one thing that not many people are aware of. Our traditional blades are actually wonders because you can mix and match the hilt and the blade. So for example, an old blade gets beat up in battle, the hilt is damaged. No problem. You can just detach that hilt and then replace it with another one. Or if it's the blade that's damaged, then get another blade and then put it on the old hilt. So that's a feature of Filipino traditional blades that's not known by many. That's why those that identify old blades have to be aware of these nuances. Because the hilt may be new, but the blade may be old, and vice versa. Another unique thing about this Bagobo blade is that it's actually chrome plated. So what is chrome plating? It's a process wherein the blade undergoes several layers. Several layers are added to the blade, such as aluminum, nickel, and then finally chrome on the exterior. So the purpose of chrome plating is to extend the lifetime of the blade because, as you know, the enemy of steel is our weather, basically. Water, disuse, not wiping it with oil. So if you chrome a blade, you can actually put it up for display because the exterior is protected by chrome. And then after the chrome gets rubbed off through time, through decades, you still have additional layers to protect the main blade. So the possession of this blade is an honor accorded only to the Bagobo Datu. So I'm very lucky to have an old sample with me. So there, those are my favorite blades. Thanks everyone for...
Thank, thank you for your story, Ray. It looks like in your collection, some of your swords tasted blood. Tama ba?
Yeah, highly
Yeah,
likely.
definitely. All
Yes.
right. I have a question back here, no? Because
Sure.
a number of swords then in the previous slides ng ibang collectors, the cord was always red. Do you know why is that? The cord ba tinatali sa hand?
So actually, there's a cultural value to that. Among the Bangsamoro, it's viewed either as an anting-anting or sometimes it's accorded to accomplished warriors. So honestly speaking, I'm still in the research process regarding that. So that's another passion of mine, which goes vis-a-vis my passion for blades. I have to research on the cultural value, the symbolism behind why is the hilt constructed like this? Why is that cord tied like that? So I'm sorry I can't give a full
It's
answer
okay.
now because I'm still researching about it. But
It's
on the
okay.
surface level, anting-anting, and it's obviously very symbolic for a warrior.
All right. I think that in itself, that's a very obvious. Also, the fact that we've shed a light on how we need to have books written about Filipino traditional blades, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yes. So I think the Facebook pages that we have right now would help us identify these blades. This is just a start already, and the fact that we're also doing this video will really put this in perspective that it needs more study and it needs more research, right?
Yes,
So
very grateful.
just to share, most of our collectors that we have here started out as practicing Filipino martial arts, and then after that, this allowed them to learn more about Philippine traditional culture. So our last speaker also shares this story. Pioneer Dave Zapanta started collecting blades in 2014. His interest in Filipino blades was sparked by practicing Filipino martial arts, where he learned the nuances involved when using edged weapons. His collection currently contains utilitarian bolos to fighting blades, with a few in-betweens. He presently works at Lyceum of the Philippines University, Cavite, as the program chair for psychology. Occasionally, he does volunteer work as a mental health responder. Welcome, Dave.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, Dave.
Hi,
We will listen to your collection story. We go along. We're just having some problems with our video. We're fixing it. But Dave will go along with his blade journey.
yeah, sure. No problem. So once again, good day everyone. And first of all, I would like to thank Chinatown Museums for inviting us here. So yeah, really excited. So let's get into it. So as I men as I mentioned, I initially started or I got interested in collecting blades due to my Filipino martial arts practice. So I often hear before the idea that originally Filipino martial arts were practiced using blades, but now I am starting to question the notion then that probably there's some truth to it, but not all. But anyway, I digress. So this interest was sparked mainly by sparring, or because we spar. I got invited, or rather, we founded Esprima Spar Club. So we started exploring different sparring formats. Not just yung una, live stick, minimal protection, you go all out. Then eventually, we started to play around with using blade simulators. Or sa first few sessions, we use blunted blades. So ang napansin ko, yung ginagamit naming trainer na since blunted siya, mas makapal yung edge, it's relatively heavy compared sa actual na live blade. And another thing that I noticed is that some of the things that you do with a stick, you can't really do with a blade. So I started I started exploring practicing on my own. Titingnan ko kung alin yung movements na magagawa ko ba using the stick with the blade. Kung ano ba dito yung nakakahiwa talaga. And little by little, I learned that it seems nga na not everything can directly translate into the blade motions. So I decided to start purchasing the different blades that are available. So basically, I started with the Palenque blades. So first few blades in my collection are actually purchased from Tabaco Albay. That's another well-known blade making area here in the Philippines na hanggang ngayon active sila. So as one story goes, the name of Tabaco is actually named after tabak. So these are some of the first few blades that I got. They are relatively inexpensive. And these are wet market blades. So available sila sa palengke ng Tabaco. And interesting story about these. I actually asked my girlfriend to purchase this because she's from Albay. So nung pauwi siya, ang daming nagpasabay ng purchase ng blade. So she packed it all, took the bus, then sinundo ko sa bus station ng early in the morning. Since the package is too heavy para sa mag-commute sa jeep, we can take the LRT, nag-taxi kami. Then nung nasa likod kami ng taxi, while we're driving down the road, bigla ko siyang tinanong out of the blue, ilang itak yung dala mo? Then she answered, around 20. So napatingin lang sa rearview mirror yung taxi driver, saglit, then tahimik na lang yung buong biyahe. But anyway, I started with those. So these are some of the blades in my collection. Starting from the left, that's called a wastari or dahong palay. So depende kung saan area ka sa Bicol, but in Tabaco, the term seem to be used interchangeably. Then the next one from the left is the Tabaco version of the ginunting, which is actually different from the Camarines Sur version. And it's very different from the Panay version of the ginunting or from the popular FMA ginunting that we often associate with ginuntings made in Panay. Then the next blade is it's actually misplaced. So initially dati, akala ko it's also from Tabaco because it was purchased from Tabaco. Then eventually I learned that the blade was actually forged in Pangasinan. And it was purchased it was being sold in Tabaco. The sheet is from Tabaco. Yung ganitong sheet, yung the yellow one is actually the signature or one of the signature sheets ng mga modern Tabaco made blades. So you see na even yung mga commercially available blades, even if you purchase them from one area, nagka-travel sila or rather, it's possible na galing sila sa ibang areas din because of they're being bought and sold in other areas. And most of the time, when you go to wet market nowadays, especially in Luzon, most karamihan ng blades na makikita mo, most likely galing Tabaco Albay. Then, next slide please. So occasionally, throughout this blade journey, I started looking for blacksmiths. Initially, ang intention ko was magpagawa ng blade based sa profile na mga nakikita ko sa internet. Then eventually, I learned that it's not really what I'm supposed to do because it's more interesting to actually find out the types of blade that they make. So one of the things that I do when I go to blacksmiths, and this is, by the way, a tip that I got from Sir Randy Salazar from Sir Style, that instead of telling them or giving them the profile that na gusto mo, you try to ask them, ano ba yung ginagawa talaga nila? Or what are the blade profiles that they usually make? And by doing that, I actually got some interesting results or interesting questions. Interesting responses. One of those was I asked one of the Cavite blacksmiths from Kawit kung ano yung ginagawa nilang blade na I gave the description. Sabi ko something that's slender, hindi masyadong malapad, and about mga 22. So, nung drawing ni Mang Walde yung Hustari, I asked kung pwedeng magpagawa. Then, ayun, pumayag naman siya. And he said na it's something na matagal na niyang hindi ginagawa. So, before, most of the time, ang mga pinapagawa sa kanila is mga utility blades. And I think this is true for many blacksmiths that you will see ngayon sa Cavite. When you look at the blades or the blades that they work on, most of them would be utility blades. Because yun yung ginagamit ngayon, yun yung mataas yung demand. But if you try to ask the right questions without leading them or without dropping terms that might influence yung design nila, some of them might actually know or still remember some of the older designs. So again, this is an idea that I learned from Sir Randy and Sir Style, and so far it's been very useful whenever I look for or whenever I find a blacksmith within Cavite. So right now, ang idea ko is to travel around Cavite and look for the remaining blacksmiths. Hopefully, kung may makikitang old arnesados dun, much better din. And to see kung ano yung mga actual blade profiles and blade types na ginagawa. Sadly, sa case ng Kawit, as far as I know, wala na daw gumagawa ng kaluban at hawakan or puluhan. Before daw, marami. May hiwalay silang taga-ukit, but the art has not been passed on na daw. So most of the time, they will only give a very plain handle. Okay, so next slide, please. So currently, this is my collection. The picture is not that updated because admittedly, during the time of lockdown, medyo na-bored ako at nadagdagan ng konti lang naman yung blade purchases ko. So the blades on top would be the ones from Luzon. Let's zoom in on that in the next slide. So these are the Luzon blades that I currently have. So most of my early blades, the wet market blades, they are found on the right side. So those are mostly Bicol blades. Then what borders them would be the spade tip or spoon tip minasbad. That's also from Bicol, Camarines Norte. So it's almost in the middle, the one with the black figural handle. So this is one of the more well-made blades from Bicol. And then next to it, left to it, is a sumut hipon from Quezon. And as far as I know, it's a hybrid between a utility and a fighting blade. Actually, when one of the pandays in Kawit saw that blade, ang reaction was, "Uy, susito sa Muntinlupa." Then the Hustari that I asked Mang Waldi to forge is right next to it, to its left. So, my mistake. That's the Dahong Palay pala, the one on the left. The long one is the Dahong Palay from Laguna, Magdalena, Laguna. Then next to it, left side, is the Hustari that I asked Mang Waldi to forge. As you can see, very plain yung handle, walang sheet, kasi wala nang gumagawa ngayon sa Kawit. I am still on the hunt for Caviteño scabbard makers and handle makers. So far, my leads, ang sinasabi sa akin ng ibang panday, baka daw mayroon pang remaining sa Amadeo Cavite or Alfonso Cavite. But I haven't looked around well enough dun sa areas na yun. Then, next to it, the last blade on the left is it's actually a custom-made pinahig. So, it was purchased from a friend of mine. Sinabi niya na he asked for a bagong shape or a leaf-shaped blade and a socketed handle. So it's made in the tradition of an Ifugao pinahig, but the blade is custom made. So more or less, it's already actually a custom blade. Then these are my first few blades, or most of these are my first few blades coming from Luzon because these are the most accessible ones. Eventually, after connecting with other collectors, I got access to Visayan blades. So a lot of these are purchased with the help of Sir Randy din. The ones on the left side are right-handed blades. So the thing about Visayan blades, unlike Luzon blades, is that most of them have chisel grinds, which means na flat yung one side, then it's angled on just the other side. So some will find this easier to sharpen. However, it also makes it a bit more difficult to use if it's not made for your handedness. So in my case, one of the challenges as a blade collector and as a blade user, since I also use this blade for martial arts practice, for martial arts practice, for trimming bushes and other practices that may or may not involve negotiating for a higher salary, hindi ko magamit ng or to its full extent yung mga right-handed blades coming from Visayas. So it's a good thing actually that every once in a while I come across left-handed blades, such as the ones found on the right-hand side of this photo. So from the top left side, that's a Sansibar, the longest one. Right side, that's a Sansibar from Carigara, Leyte. Next to it is a Aklan. It's one of the numerous versions of Aklan Talibong with a, I believe this is what you call a kinampit blade profile. Some might call it ginunting. Then third to it would be a Cebu Pinuti with a lawi-lawi blade profile. So it's actually one of the best blades that I have currently in my collection. Then second from the bottom is a Boholano Bubiel. Then last is actually a relatively it's a blade from Cebu made by one of the older Silvas. So it's another Pinuti with a Binatangas blade profile. So on the right side, the top one is a Talibong from Sibalom, Antique. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correct. Then the next one is a blade from Bohol. I forgot what is it called exactly. Parang sundang lang din ang tawag nung iba. Then the last two ones are from Capiz. So they're from, I believe they're from Rojas Capiz. So I asked a friend of mine to purchase it for me, and they obliged naman. So yeah, I got access to Visayan blades, and eventually, what I found for a long time, what I find difficult to acquire are blades from Mindanao. But eventually, I got access to Mindanao blades also through the help of my fellow collectors. So being friends with fellow collectors gives you additional info on how you can acquire more blades. So eventually, I got these Mindanao blades. The first Mindanao blade that I actually got is the third blade on the top picture. So it's the one without the sheet. It's called the Panabas. So interestingly, I didn't get this from Mindanao per se. I found this on a family friend's backyard. Sabi ko, this is an unusual looking one. Then tinanong ko kung saan nakuha or saan nabili. It's been there for a while daw, hindi na nila maalala. Then one of the older ones, sabi parang binili daw nila sa sa isang stall na Muslim ang may-ari sa Trece Martires, Cavite. Then eventually, I actually found that stall in Trece. Yes, it's owned by they're owned by Muslims, and I asked kung meron silang ganyan. Pinakita ko yung picture. Then the store owner recognized it, and they said na may ganun sila dati, pero wala na ngayon. So it's an interesting find because basically I found it somewhere else. Then second from on the top picture at the middle is a barong from Basilan. So that's a Yakan barong. And at the very top is a tira from Zamboanga. The sheet is actually plain, so I just wrapped it with a Yakan fabric. So the blades on the bottom, except for the leftmost small one, are all barongs. They are all they're different kinds of barongs. Most of them are from Sulu. So the one on the middle is from Basilan. Okay, next slide, please. So eventually, I got into antiques din, or old blades. So, dati puro modern pieces kasi ang intention ko is gamitin sila or subukan. Kumbaga, function over form ang initial idea ko. Then eventually, I got into the idea of looking or acquiring pieces or historical pieces that may tell interesting stories or pieces that can be considered as part of history. So I got this Maranao Chris. It was in a very bad shape when I first got it. So at the picture on the right hand corner, that's the state where I got it. So if you look at it, there's actually a cavity in the handle, and the blade was actually more rusted. Medyo nalinis ko na yan. Then when I tried restoring it, so by the way, I knew when it comes to restoring old blades, so it's not exactly the best work around here, but I value the experience of working with the old blade with your own hands so that you can be a bit more intimate with it. You can feel every inch, every piece of carving so that you can know the blade better. So when I tried restoring it, that's the result, yung top two pictures sa taas. So yes, it was identified as a Chris from, it's a Maranao Chris, 19th century. There's a typo in the label. Then the bottom left hand side is a bahong from Sulu. So it's another relatively old piece, but not as old as the Chris. Okay, next slide, please. So what are my favorite blades in my collection? So like I said, I primarily collect blades so that I may use it for practice in Filipino martial arts, very similar to what Sir Raimundo does. And I occasionally do cutting practice. I believe that that's an interesting way to train, to make sure, or rather to know if your movements can actually apply to blades. Dati I just cut for fun. Parang whatever I do, whatever comes into mind. Then eventually, I tried integrating it little by little or a bit more in my Filipino martial arts practice. Is it something that can be considered practical in modern days? I think that's a question that doesn't have any clear answer, but it is something that I like doing, and I have so much fun cutting different things. So that's why I got into it. So this is a pinuti made by Lito Arda from Cebu. So it has a lawi-lawi blade profile, and it's actually left-handed. So it suits me very well. It's very light, very agile. So it suits my usual sparring style. Then next to it would be the 20th century barong from Sulu. So this is an unusual example of a barong because it's longer than most. And personally, I kind of like unusual things. So I decided to keep this in my collection. I know na may mga iba dito na gustong makuha ang barong na to. So next to it, is a Dinalayap Minasbad. So it's from Camarines Zoo. It's actually a gift from my girlfriend. So yes, supportive ang girlfriend ko pagdating sa blade collection ko. Thank you very much. So she gave this to me during, it was delivered during lockdown, but she ordered this in advance. So it has a heavy tip, and it's an interesting blade to use or to cut with. And finally, another blade that I like from my collection, although it's not as old as the Chris or it's not as old as the Chris or as the other barong, is Ibarong from Sulu with a broken turtle shell scabbard. So this is another one of my recent acquisitions, and I really like swinging this blade around. So that's why I've decided to keep this blade as well. So I guess those are my favorite blades, and that's how I got into blade collection. And I guess that's it, Muna. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing us your story, Dave. We would like to just ask you first. There was a question on the comment that was he was asking what is your most rare piece
Ah.
of your collection? For
Think-
the 4 pieces that you shared with us, which one would it be though?
I think in my current collection, well, admittedly, unlike Sir Randy, I don't have a lot of rare blades. So I probably the rarest blade that I have in my collection would be the long barong na from Sulu. Yeah, that one.
This
That
one.
one. Right. It's probably one of the rarer pieces in my collection. So one of the reasons why I'm not letting it go. I'm not letting it go with it because, like I said, I like unusual things.
Yes. The way I surmise from your collection, you're left-handed, ano?
Yes, po. So
That's why
it's not exactly a secret. Minsan when I spar in FMA, I use my right hand first. Then kapag medyo nahihirapan, I'll just surprise na I'm actually left-handed. I think Sir Raimundo experienced that because we spar, we belong to the same group, Eskrima Spar Club. Pero ngayon I always have to use my left hand against Sir Raimundo because I also learned the hard way that you can't always start things slow.
Okay. That's true. Sige, we will share first with everyone a poll question before we go to our Q&A. We would like to know, those who are watching, what is the first characteristic that draws you to appreciate a Filipino blade? Is it the maker or the source? Is it the story behind the blade? Is it the aesthetics or the design? Or D, is it the materials used? Yung pag-forge ng steel. Okay? This is very interesting because we've listened to all of our 5 blade journeys of the collectors, no? And you've seen how they were able to start collecting based from either practicing MMA or looking for souvenirs, a very specific kind of collection, right? But one thing is for sure that we've gathered throughout our discussion is that blade collection in the Philippines, most especially, still we would have to have opportunities for research and for study in this field. Okay, so for this poll question, there is no right or wrong answer again, and it's a personal preference, but it will set the tone already for what you think is your first characteristic that draws you to appreciate a Filipino blade. I would also encourage the collectors to please go to the live and then you could key in your answers also. All right. Most of you answered a while ago na it's you're into old blades rather than the modern ones. Okay. We will bring this up again in a bit, but for now we will move on to caring for your collection. All right. So we have quite a number of questions already. I listed them down, but we will go first to Michael because you started it with your own collection story. How do you do proper storage and with the inspection and cleaning also?
Well, I have a cabinet and sword stands for my blade. So basically that's how I store them. Sometimes when I'm cleaning them, I leave them on the floor. But regular inspection, regular cleaning, because I have many blades, I can't do it all at once. So
By regular you mean monthly, once a month?
no. What happens is I get one particular in 1 week I get 1 or 2 particular blades and I clean them. I don't I oil them. I play around with them. I practice some of my forms. I do this as a form of stress relief. Because I mean in between my work. So every time I do that, I also take the time to clean my blades and oil my blades. So I just do it one or two blades at a time. I don't.
Alright.
I rarely do it all at once. The only time I do it all at once is when I take the blades out to take pictures. After that, since it's already out, I have to clean everything.
Mhm.
So every time I do that, it's really a major. It's really a major procedure. Whereas
Okay.
taking one or two blades out every once in a while, regularly, it's easier to. It's I mean it's easier. It's basically a minor procedure.
Mhm. Mhm. We've seen in the blade care, there was a slide na to remove rusting, vinegar is a blade's best friend.
Yes.
Yes.
Who uses this? Raise your hand so I could see. Almost all of you. So let's start with Alan first. How do you use vinegar?
Um, kapag ka sobrang rusted yung blade, I usually dunk the whole blade sa isang tube ng vinegar. Kunyari, kung mas maliit siya, ganyan, isang tub ng vinegar, nakasuksok lang siya doon. Nakalubog siya. The entire blade, the entire thing that is rusted, nakaano lang siya sa
Overnight.
vinegar. Overnight or maybe 2 days minsan kapag sobrang rusted. Tapos, parang magic, pag tanggal mo, wipe off mo na lang, wala na yung rust niya, tsaka medyo sa may konting
You mean the
black
following day?
patina. Yes.
Okay. Wala naman siyang pinilian na sinamak or
Wala.
or wala. Just like pure vinegar.
Pure vinegar. Yung iba may...
Apple cider.
One that you can afford.
Oo.
Yes. All right.
Pinaka-cheapest.
Okay. Yung kay Ray, I would like to bring out, do you use oil in your cleaning of the blades to just to remove the rust?
Like Alan, also vinegar. So actually, this is one of the pipes that I use. Similar technique kay Alan. So assuming that this is super rusted, we just fill this up with vinegar, and then we dunk the blade
Dunk it.
overnight. And then after that, intermittent scrubbing with a brass brush.
That's a PVC pipe, ano?
Yes, it's a PVC pipe.
Oh, customized. Okay. Very clever. Right. For Dave, I have a question. How about beeswax, orange oil for use of prevention ng cracking? Do you also use it?
Primarily, we use oil sa wooden part. So, pwede sa scabbard or sa handle. Personally, I haven't tried using those beeswax blade itself. Most of the time, sa wooden part ginagamit.
Okay. Randy, would you like to share yata some brands
Beeswax.
that you have? That's the beeswax. How about a while ago what you were holding?
This one would be the orange oil. So the orange oil, you like to use this wood, no? Or you could use kung leather scabbard naman siya, leather conditioners or wooden conditioners. But the beeswax would really do well. Most local artisans actually prefer, although I just like to put a disclaimer, this is toxic, yung linseed oil po natin. It brings out the color of the wood as well. But adding to what the guys have been saying, dunking sa vinegar, one thing na favorite ko, kaibigan ng mga blade enthusiasts, ito po yung malimit ko ginagamit, Scotch Brite.
Scotch Brite.
The green one po. So yung scar pad po natin, just use slightly para lang hindi magasgas yung blade. So it doesn't necessarily mean you go straight away to sandpaper to remove rust. Dahil sayang rin pag nasira mo po yung blade. So this would be your best friend, yung Scotch Brite po. And steel brush po.
Okay.
And for oiling po, dagdag lang, if any oil would do, depending, if you're using it for food, then you might want to consider using food grade oils po. So virgin coconut oil will work, any regular any cooking oil will work. Pwede rin po yung singer oil, but kung medyo pihikan ka, since you spent a lot already on your blades, you can go for this as brand specific po ng mga blades. This one is Fraglube, is very popular among blade enthusiasts. Isang local hack ko po, which is malimit gamitin ng mga kapatid natin sa Mindanao, mga nagbibenta ng mga Moro blades, yung para sa sakit ng katawan, yung bitet po. So it smells good actually when you put it on the blade. So I
The
actually
menthol
use these
one.
for my blades.
Okay.
The red and the green one actually, depending kung ano yung gusto mong amoy. Paubos na nga yun sa akin. I use most of this often for my trad blades.
Okay. I have a question
Mabango kasi.
since we're into cleaning and the care for the blades. There were quite a number who asked, how do you sharpen a wavy crease? This question is for anyone who knows the answer. How do you sharpen a wavy crease?
Lots of care.
May I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
The answer first?
Yes,
All right.
Randy.
This is one because we learn from each other actually. If it's an old one, especially if you're an old, because the tendency for us actually is to go and sharpen our blades right away. But a good friend of ours, one who guides us out actually in this journey actually, if you have a grail blade and it's really old, learn to trust the old edge of the blade. So for the really old blades actually, they do not sharpen it. I do not sharpen the grail blades. It's actually yung kung ano yung edge niya noon, yun pa rin. And you probably be seeing sa mga cut videos namin that it's really sharp pa rin. Pero if you're using wavy crease, you can use a rod, no, a ceramic rod to clean it, to sharpen the blade pag talagang ano na siya.
Okay. And then my follow-up question to that is, who restores Maranao crease? Or who restores for that matter? Do we have a restorer of traditional blades in the Philippines?
Parang for the group, for us, we do our own restorations for our own blade.
Personal
Pero
collection.
to offer a service of restoration to other people, I would guess si Sir Randy volunteers sometimes to friends, sa mga friends. Pero as a
Yeah.
service,
I do enjoy giving blades a second life, but I do not do it for business. I do not want to compete with our local artisans. But if you have a blade for restoration, just hit me a PM, and I will actually try and network you with the local artisan kung saan kisino yung blade. Because most of the concept ng ibang collectors, porket panday, dalhin ko yung crease ko sa panday, alam na gawin ng panday. Depende po kung nasan yung panday because yung mga panday po natin would have different specialty blades po. So a Luzon maker would not necessarily know the intricacies of Bangsamoro blade. So you would rather bring the Bangsamoro blades to the Bangsamoro artisans. It's the same thing actually that happens for the Visayan makers. So just hit me a PM. We'll connect you with the local artisans po, so they can help
Yes,
you with your
thank
blades.
you. We will be showing also the contacts of our collectors later. Ray, you were raising your hand.
Oh, I was just saying that I also restore stuff. I love
Okay.
restoring blades.
Oh, Ray does it for fun. Also as a service, Ray, no?
Yeah, only for those that I know. Yeah,
Okay.
for close friends.
As a bad influencer.
Marami nang magkakaibigan sa iyo.
We will go from top to bottom. Last words, especially for the newbies. We have in the comment section quite a number of people who did say they have their own collection, or some are also planning to start their own collection. What last words do you want to tell them? Michael?
Collect what calls to you. There are sometimes the breed chooses the owner. There are some breeds which actually call to you, and when you hold these breeds, you will find that these breeds fit really well in your hand. They fit well with the form that you know. These are breeds worth having.
Why does this sound like Lord of the Rings? Yeah. Ray?
For any hobby, especially in blade collecting, especially in traditional blades, it's very important to do your own research, especially since our blades are very symbolic. It carries great weight of our culture and history. So make it always a point, especially since we have the edge on technology na. to always research about the traditional blades that you want or feel an attraction to. So it will pay off in the future. That's
That's
all.
true.
Happy collecting.
Dave?
Yeah, I'll second what Sir Ray said then when it comes to doing research. So just because it's another thing, be cautious then with the information that you find in the internet. So just because it has a coherent or interesting story doesn't necessarily mean that it's always true or the term applies for everything. So if magpapagawa kayo ng mga blade sa Panday, common mistake na nakikita rin minsan is nagpapakopya ng blade from another area. So I would just like to echo the tip that I got from older collectors din when pag magpapagawa sa Panday, ask kung ano talaga yung ginagawa nila. So ask them, ano po yung mga itak na ginagawa nyo or ano po yung mga ano. So it's better to have something that they have mastered making rather than asking them to copy a blade that they've never made before. And that way, we could also help preserve the profiles and the blade types within that area without contaminating it.
That's very good advice, especially for the local blacksmiths, no? Yeah. Alan, do you have any advice
Okay,
for
sa
our
akin naman,
new collectors?
For the new collectors, have a criteria kung ano yung hinahanap ninyo. Kunyari, for this period of time, kunyari, for this year, I'm going to look for only Luzon blades. Para malimit mo yung sarili mo. Kasi the blades, kapag hinahanap mo na sila, lilitaw sila eh. Parang tawag dito? The Secret. Parang gano'n yung attraction.
Law of attraction.
Law of attraction. Kapag hinahanap mo sila, darating sila sa'yo. Parang gano'n yan. So, lagyan mo yung sarili mo ng limit unless talagang unlimited yung resources mo. So, kung unlimited resources mo, sige, pagka dumating, bibilin mo. Pero kung for those na limited yung resources, i-limit mo yung hinahanap mo para mag-swak dun sa resources mo.
All right. That's very good advice. Randy, last words.
Yes. If you're gonna be going into blade collecting, also be responsible enough also to know what you are collecting, because we do have a law actually about carrying blades in public as well. The Republic, aking batas pambansa bilang 6 po natin. So you might get into trouble just because you're a blade collector without knowing the law. Other than that, for those na interesado sa old blades, it doesn't necessarily mean it's old, it's already valuable po. There are parameters that we look into to assess the condition of the blade and its value. So it's a fun thing to do. And for those modern collectors naman po, I would like to encourage to buying true to source, which means try to know the blade that you're after, know where it is from, which island, and try to source it from there, because there are two types of blades circulating in the market: the traditional ones and the ones which are actually what we call renditions. Yung kinopya lang po pero hindi po galing talaga doon. So at the end of the day, you already spent money, then you realize that you cannot accept actually that you spent good money, and what you have actually is a rendition. It's not actually the traditional true to source na blade po. And most often than not, the renditions are more expensive than the traditionals po talaga.
You did mention something about appraisals. Where could they appraise
Yes po.
their blades?
Any of the guys here actually in the forum right now, in the blade forums po natin, pero there's no authority right now in the Philippines actually that certifies the blades. So there's no one authority actually na area po na nagsasabi. It's more of a collective effort among the enthusiasts actually that help each other identify what is real and what is not.
At least it will bonding siya with the community. Everyone knows
Yes
that,
po.
oh, yeah, this is the range. All right. We're going back to our poll question. I just like to share the answers with everyone. Our viewers think that it's aesthetics that trumps the most. So if it looks nice, the hilt and the blade, that's one of the reasons why they'll appreciate the Filipino blade. The second part is story, and then the maker and the source. Quite just only 4% actually, only 1 person answered materials used. So the bulk of everyone, the majority of the answers answered aesthetics. Thank you to all our collectors who joined our talk today. Thank you, Michael, Ray, Rainier, Alan, and Randy. As promised, I am going to share with you their contacts. Please screen cap them so that you know how to get in touch with them just in case you have more questions about Filipino Blades. So for Randy, it's the Facebook page is Filipino Traditional Blades. And then for Alan Ebora, it's Pinoy Blade Hunter. And he also has a YouTube account on this. For those who started off with Filipino martial arts and moved on to sword collecting, we have Eskrima Spar Club, Sinag Filipino Martial Arts, and Cali Manila. These are all followers of Sina Ray and both Rainier and Dave also. So please follow them. Screen cap this. You have the emails in. It's escrimasparclub@gmail.com, sinag.fma@gmail.com, and ptkmanila.com@gmail.com. All right. Moving on, for the entire month of September, Chinatown Museum will be having #collections. If you have a collection, please email us photos of your cool collections for a chance to be featured in our page. All right, but for next Saturday, next Friday, this coming Friday, because of the September 22, the martial law, just to make sure that we remember what happened during martial law, we will be having Museums Matter. This is handled by Prof. Roy Mendoza of Martial Law Museum. We will be tackling this, and also we will be sharing this on Vibal page. Please follow us and RSVP in our events. All right. For all of our topics, coin collection last Saturday, and also for Filipino Blades, if you would like to rewatch it, plus we have other videos also ever since June, please subscribe to Museums Matter. This is for our YouTube channel. Thank you again, and we will see you on our next live stream. Bye, enjoy the weekend.